Hello, everybody, and welcome to Anyhow, Anyway by Summer England. I'm your podcast host, Summer England, and we talk about all things bookish, smutty, chaotic, and the writing chaos in between. I'm really good at my own intros. Today, we're getting into it. We're getting into lore. We're doing a bit of a lore drop, okay? Because I'm coming at you. First and foremost, let's start out cozy really quickly. I'm coming at you after having freshly gotten off a writer's retreat in upstate New York at Writer Farms by R.E. Endeavors. You should give them a follow on Instagram. And first off, I road tripped from Virginia to New York. It was gorgeous, okay? I woke up at 5:30 a.m. I drove in the dark for a lot of it. And honestly, with my astigmatism, I shouldn't be doing that because things start looking the same and reflecting back in my corneas in a way that they shouldn't. But I found a diesel truck on my drive up there that he and I were buddies, I would like to think, though I do have this sneaking suspicion because sometimes diesel trucks really do try to be running me off the road. I think that they hate a Kia Soul. I have my biggest conspiracy theory is that all diesel truck drivers, I realize I'm saying diesel truck, and I think that's the same thing twice. You know what I'm talking about. The big things on the highway. I think they have it out specifically for Kia Souls. They're like, I hate those little green boogers, specifically the 2011 model, the OG model that call to mind the commercial with the hamsters hopping out of it. They hate me. Now, anyhow, I found a very nice 18-wheeler. There we go. And we made it through together. It was foggy. It was a little bit terrifying. But after that, the sun rose and it was such a pretty drive. And it has always been in my greatest heart's desire to be up in New York and be up in New England in the fall. And I got to do it. And it was so special. And the writer's retreat, and this is for any writers listening to the podcast, I really do think it's important sometimes to get out of your own space as much as you can. If you are hitting a writer's block, obviously also this is if you have the means to do this. Not everybody does. If you don't, go to a cafe, go to a library. But if you do and you're like, I want to go somewhere for a weekend, where do I go? I really do suggest this farm because you are out in nature. It is absolutely gorgeous. The people who run it are fantastic. And it is in its essence meant to be an artist's guest house because it used to be the space on Writer Farms where a bunch of Broadway people would go and do their playwriting, and that previous administration or whatever it was under, nonprofit, went under, and so it's under new management. And you can just go out and pick radishes or eggplants. I got there and then went out with a host, and she and I harvested our dinner. Okay. And as somebody who grew up farming on a little patch of land in Kentucky as a kid, and then I got a job with a farm family over a summer 2 years ago, which actually gave me the inspiration for The Impossible Garden of Clara Thorne. Hello, pre-orders are open in UK, US, and Canada. You can click the link in the show notes. Anyhow, anyway, I was so excited to be able to do that. And it was very productive. You're around people, but I'm going to go back just myself and probably my partner because I'm dragging him along on so many adventures, mostly because it's so nice to have a human person to just like bounce thoughts off of all the time. But I would go there by myself. I would go there with a group of people. This time I went with a group of people and it was like a small group and we just all were writing our different things. And sometimes we were together, sometimes we were apart, but the farm is so gorgeous that you have spaces to adventure. It's 127 acres, so I was just able to frolic. We would go down on the dock. We would walk down this little foggy, misty path and have coffee and watch the sun. It's just so, so beautiful. I cannot overstate to you. I mean, you're right by Sleepy Hollow, New York as well, and I think it's called New Salem, New York. You're in Putnam County. It's gorgeous. It is genuinely breathtaking. I can't recommend that space enough. I can't wait to go back. I can't wait to host more writers' retreats. And that is one half of where I'm coming to you from. The other half is that a few days ago, I was scrolling on TikTok and found myself on Rapture Talk. That's right. Apparently yesterday, a few Christians, by a few I mean quite a few, were under the impression that the rapture was happening. This is worldwide. And there were people selling their cars. There was a therapist who shut down his practice and let go of all of his clients because there was a rapture happening yesterday. Now, I grew up there were two halves of my family. One half was the fundamentalist Christian part that believed that we would never know when the rapture was. So I lived quaking in my boots that the rapture would come in the middle of the night and I wasn't going to be prepared. The second half are I don't know how to necessarily explain them. We've got I think there would be better described as zealots and evangelicals. They were always thinking the rapture was coming all the time. They would sit out on the front lawn. They would get into these, I don't know, forums. It was before Reddit. It was before the internet. It was before things could cycle through and a zeitgeist could be started from some idiot posting on Reddit like, oh, I think God is coming. And somebody says that they're a prophet. And then all of a sudden, 20,000 people are selling their cars and their couches and their apartments and giving up their leases and such because of this. But my family deep in the South, which I think is another thing to do. My family is all very, very Southern in tiny communities, and the South goes freaky. The South sometimes feels inherently occult. The South and in just upper West Coast, y'all are freaking me out half the time. It's like anti-vaxxers, two different reasons. So, not trying to offend those listening in from Washington State, but I've known some freaks from there. So this was not anything I haven't lived through. It was interesting to see it in this era of TikTok of people saying goodbye, and they were just so full-chested about it. But it was also intersecting with this really interesting, I think it was actually a Substack article, an essayist talking about the white conservative Christian church could not be farther away from Jesus at this point in time. Now, before we go into this religious lore drop conversation, because that's what we're going in for, okay? You guys want to know, you pervs want to know about my deconstruction. You want to know about the high control religion that I grew up in. You want to know why I'm so funny because of religious trauma. Okay, I'll fucking tell you. I will. But all that to say, sometimes, a lot of times, in these political conversations that we're having, or religious or what have you, there's a lot of rhetoric around America's never been more divided, the church has never been more this, the Christians have never been more this. Well, we have had the Civil War. I do think it's important to have a little bit of perspective that even if you agree with it, your side can still be sensationalizing things and still using polarization as a means in which to drive their point home. And I don't necessarily think it's always helpful. That being said, a few days ago, I saw that and I posted the essay to my Instagram. And then for whatever reason, I got a bee in my bonnet and I just started posting Instagram stories about religion because I was like, Christians will worship anybody but Jesus. It's their favorite thing to do. Now, when I say Christians, I am talking about a subset, okay? I know that people still worship God and Jesus, and they're nice people. Actually, they're not assholes. They're not hateful and horrible. But the white conservative Christians church that is in the realm of the political conversation right now, that's touting the right-wing Fox News nonsense, that's who I'm talking to because that's where I grew up. And my big thing on my Instagram stories, and one of the reasons why I'm telling you all this today is because I got probably 300 to 400 DMs over the course of 24 hours of people asking me to share my experience because either it was similar to yours or you wanted to understand where people are coming from because it's so out of the lane of logic. Hi, my name's Summer and I would love to tell you about it. Anyhow, that's sort of the subset of religion we're talking about today because it's usually a high control situation. And my big thing is I'm not convinced half of the people, honestly more than that, 75% of the people that are in a lot of political conversation today and the churches that are like, yes, make America great again, I'm not convinced they've read the Bible. I really haven't. Now, what are my qualifications to talk about this? Okay, well, not to pat myself out on the back, but I've read the Bible tip to taint multiple times. Because I grew up as an undiagnosed autistic child, I was terrified I was going to get something wrong. Because again, grew up in a high control religion. Part of a high control religion is fear mongering. It is saying to a 5-year-old child, you will burn in hell. And worse, you might know people, you might love people, and there's nothing you can do, so you better like the time that you have with them because they are going to die and burn in hell because we are the only people who are going to church. Okay? So I grew up in that rhetoric, and thus I was obsessed with memorizing the texts. I memorized the book of Hebrews at the age of 12. Memorized it. I think I can still remember some of it. God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in times past through the prophets, has now spoken, ... You get the rest of it. Okay? That's where I'm coming at you from. I also was the Bible Bowl winner of the Midwest. Every single Bible Bowl I ever went to, again, in this, I was raised Church of Christ. Every single Bible Bowl I ever went to and attended, I was first place. Okay? I am not a biblical scholar. I do know and can participate in those conversations with a very firm head on my shoulders because I was engrossed in that world for 23 years, but I wasn't just engrossed in it from an idealized perspective. I was also engrossed in it from an educational and scholar and sort of putting it through academic lenses because that's how my brain works. And so I'm able to sort of, now I guess I'm grateful for it because I can participate in these conversations and tell you right now, these people aren't reading the book that they're getting. Okay? Famously, they are not reading it. And so I post these stories on Instagram, right? And basically the gist of it is, you guys have not read the Bible. You straight up haven't, and I know it because we've talked, and I know that you haven't. And one of the reasons I haven't talked about deconstruction and really shared all of that with people is because I always get people who want to clap back, and I'm like, you're not even saying verses to me right now, okay? Or they'll be like, have you thought about this verse? Yeah, bitch, I have it memorized. You don't want to get into this conversation with me. You really don't. You really don't, because a big thing that people are basing their current political stance on is the Old Testament. And in modern day Western Christianity, my big academic issue with that is that the old law was done away with when Jesus came to die on the cross. So you are picking and choosing bits and pieces of the Old Testament in order to serve your warped sense of how the world is supposed to work. First and foremost, the Old Testament has fables in it. Secondly, it's a historical perspective of primitive societies. And thirdly, if you want to pick and choose, then you're going to have to take the whole thing with you, because that's another thing in westernized high control Christianity, is that you're not supposed to pick and choose. You have to take the whole thing as it is, specifically the New Testament. But if you're gonna have to follow through your logic then. Because have y'all read the Levitical law? Be honest. Because are you saving your seed? Okay, because that's a big thing in the Levitical law. When your wife is on her period, does she go out of the camp for 2 weeks? Does she leave home for 2 weeks? No, you have her at home. You do. When she has a boy baby, does she come back after a week of being unclean? And when she has a girl baby, she has to stay out an extra week because girls are inherently unclean. Are you doing that? Where's God by day as a smoke stack and by fire at night? I don't see that. So what do you mean you're bringing in the Old Testament? And when I posted that, a woman came at me and she was like, well, Jesus came to fulfill the old law. So, and I was like, bitch, I know. So it's done. What are you saying to me? You don't want to get into these conversations with me, okay? I promise. I autistically ingested the Bible. I didn't just read it to confirm my own biases. I was like, I will understand this. I have to understand the logic. I need to understand every bit of this. I need to memorize all of these stories, okay? I was knee deep in the Old Testament. The Levitical law was my favorite book of the Bible when I was 7 because it was a bunch of rules and crazy standards, okay? So now we get to the New Testament. All right, now the basis of this for the people who are not religious, Jesus literally, he said, can you fucking be nice, is what he said, quote unquote. And I'm not convinced any of these bitches who are saying, this is what God wants. Have you read the red words of the Bible? And those of you who have never cracked open a New Testament, all of Jesus's words supposedly are in red. Now, this goes into textual culture, meaning that if you do an ounce of historical research, it is very clearly trackable where the Bible was literally changed in order to serve if we had a Catholic king or a Catholic queen, and then we get into the Catholic versus Protestantism, and then we get different versions of the Bible. So the King James Version is literally for a king trying to like go both ways of Protestantism and Catholicism. Now, anyhow, all that to say, probably also do your research on the text that you are filtering your life through, because it's very trackable that it is politically and has always been a source of political control. Now, Jesus' words, here's the thing. I love that guy. I think what he says is great. And he says kind of next to nothing other than be nice. Okay? He has Pharisees around him who are like, well, I'm about to beat this prostitute because he's sexually immoral. Okay? And Jesus said, he who is without sin cast the first stone. That is actually what he said. People are looking around. Well, I can't say that. Okay. Well, then how about let's not stone this person? Because another thing in Christianity is that all sins are equal in the eyes of God. Every single one of it. So when Brenda is gossiping with Janice behind someone's back because gossip and lewd talk is a sin, that's as bad in their eyes as if a gay person was gay. Okay? So why are you making gay people and trans people big villains when if you're thinking it's about sexual immorality, well, your gossiping with Janice is on the same level. Okay? Your gossiping with Janice is actually on the same level as murder. Okay? These are the questions I have for you. All right? Now, let's get into the religion that I grew up in, because you guys wanted to know. I grew up in the Church of Christ, which is a Christian religion. It's very new, honestly. They say we're the only church that practices how the original churches did it. So when in the New Testament, when Jesus died, and then the apostles that weren't killed yet started different churches in the Fertile Crescent, okay, and Paul went around and wrote letters to them, the Church of Christ is like, yeah, we are like that. We're like those churches in the primitive societies. Okay, well, okay. Okay, now, it is a high control religion. Here are the tenets of it. No instrumental music, okay? No alcohol. You must avoid any appearance of sin, which has to do with alcohol as well. So, social drinking is a big no-no. There was a dress code only for women. There are elders and deacons. Elders sort of guide the flock. Deacons take over different tasks and such for the church. Elders are heavily involved in your life, okay? We have to attend 3 to 4 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and then other events and such. It is noted if you do not attend, you will be spoken to if you are not, because you are in sin. You tithe every Sunday. You are expected to tithe. They pass around a plate. We have communion every Sunday, all right? It's not just every quarter, where we partake in the body of Christ and the blood of Christ. Now, do we believe in transubstantiation, where we think that the bread turns into Jesus' flesh and blood inside of us? No, it's like a symbol. Okay. We are the only ones going to heaven. Another big tenet. Huge tenet. Okay? You have to be baptized very specifically and in the right mind and at the right age, all this stuff. And we are the only ones going. So it's big on evangelicalism. Okay? Great. Do not have friends or partners outside of the church. Now, that is getting into the grayness of this very black and white religion, because obviously you want to bring people into the fold. Secondly, it's not inherently a sin to marry somebody or be best friends with somebody outside of the church, but it's making your life harder. And we're also toying with, don't participate in even the appearance of sin. So if your best friend is going to prom and drinking and you're their best friend, then somebody might think, well, then Summer also is probably going to prom and drinking, and those are no-nos. Oh, yeah, we weren't allowed to go to prom. We were not allowed to go to prom. Not allowed to go anywhere where there was lascivious behavior, all right? People like, they're not allowed to get horny, okay? They're rubbing up against each other, and it's just wild. And the way that prom was pitched to us at this church was like a devil orgy. Everybody is just bumping uglies, and the teachers are helping with it, and all of the food is laced with like weed, and LSD. Is it LSD? Or is that Church of Latter-day Saints? LCD? Ugh, well, whatever. I've never done a drug. Not a single one. I need to get on it. Apparently my mom did Tylenol. That's why I'm autistic. And I wish she would have done a little bit more of it. So I could have had I'm good at math autism instead of my hands Tyrannosaurus Rex. When I get overstimulated, I can't really speak, and I have really a lot of trouble when I'm in conflict with somebody I love. That's neither here nor there. Okay. Another big aspect of this was Bible Bowl. You should be in the Word and all of this stuff. So that's the religion I grew up in. Now, the thing with Church of Christ is that it is a spectrum, meaning it is a non-denominational church, and every single one is anonymous. Our big thing is there is no intercessor between us and God. So the big bad thing about the Baptists is that there's a Baptist convention, meaning there's sort of like a ruling senate, if you will, that are considering the word of God and saying, actually, we're for gay people now. And then they'll backtrack it depending on whoever's in the political arena at the time. And then they'll say, actually, we're not because we want to be in the good graces. And it's also why Church of Christ and a lot of Christianity hates Catholicism, because they're like, actually, the priest has more power over man and he thinks that he's interceding between God and I, but the only person who's ever done that is Jesus. We hate the Catholics. We hate their symbols. We hate all of this. We're literally doing the same thing. We are literally doing the same thing. Instead of a priest, we put a political figure in the same area and respect that a priest has, and that political figure becomes who we invest all of our energy into, idolatry into, and how we filter how we live our lives and consider our religion. So get off my ass about that. The Catholics have rosary beads. Can you just leave them alone? They've got robes and rosary beads, okay? And you guys are so against looking anything like that. It's fucking annoying. Also, a huge thing in this, no sex before marriage. None. Okay? You are to remain pure. You lose your virginity on your wedding night. Now, I would argue that this tenet and those that follow it are one of the reasons why the divorce rate is so high. I married into this. I grew up in this, okay? Not only did I grow up in it, I was the golden child. Again, I was the Bible Bowl winner. I was excellent in every class. I was taking notes, because when you grow up in a cult, because that is what it is, that is 100% what it was. Because I was also homeschooled until my sophomore year of high school. So, and I wasn't allowed to have friends outside of it. Your world is so narrow. Your world is literally the church that you're going to and then the family that you're in. Okay? And whatever shows that they allow you to watch and books they allow you to read. So in a cult, right? I grew up in this I don't leave this until I'm 23. I grow up in it. I go to university in it. And then I marry in it because I have blinders on. I'm not thinking for myself. Again, the undiagnosed autism is coming into play in a huge way because I've masked my entire life. I have lived my entire life insincerely sounds wrong, but performing what I believed love and connection to be, because I also grew up in a disorganized, chaotic household, and then I had a high control religion, and it was so intense and so much stimulus that I was not experiencing the world. I was performing in it. Because if I let myself experience the world, then you would flash back to me. This is about to be a little bit dark, content notification. From the ages of kind of as early as I can remember, I would live these days like this. And from 6 to the age of 20, right before I had my kid, I would pray to God to take me away in the middle of the night so I wouldn't have to wake up and live another day like this and feel the way that I felt all the time. But again, I was a golden child, went through it, married into it. And the thing with the marriage part, the no sex before marriage, dude, people are so fucking horny because sex is so goddamn taboo. You're not supposed to masturbate, lore, okay? You're not supposed to masturbate. Well, I grew up in that and everybody was fucking freaks. Okay, the elders were saying shit to 12-year-olds of you guys need to make sure that your dresses are high enough because you're going to be distracting to the people who are giving out communion, because the women just sat there. We did not participate in any of the leadership. Women were allowed to teach classes until the young men were of age, meaning they were baptized, and then they were not allowed to teach those classes anymore. It was nothing. Girls were there. It felt like as sex objects or a vessel for a future person. Grew up very young, elders telling me, oh, I'm so jealous of your future husband one day. He's going to get such a good woman and you look so whatever. Thankfully, I didn't get that till I was much older because I was ugly. I really was. I was so ugly. I grew up as like the ugly duckling. And so that in that part, I am glad I was autistic because my entire family let it be known that my sister was so much prettier than me. And that really could have done us in relationship wise. I could have hated her. But in my tiny autistic brain, I was like, it's just a face. Okay. I don't have to be pretty. Whatever. That's so subjective. Okay, that's fine. Anyhow, that's how I grew up. Finally, anyhow, anyway, I'm getting back to the no sex before marriage. Dude, if I had just fucked my ex-husband normal like, no way we would have ever gotten married. Are you kidding me? What do you mean don't have sex or live with your partner before you enter into a life with them? And if you did that and it's worked out for you, great. That was the worst case scenario for me and for so many women. And I'm so deeply convinced it is just about continuous control of women's bodies. What do you mean I'm gonna have to be married and then just deal with my husband? Are you joking? Are you actually for real right now? I wish I could go back to my younger self. And not that she would be able to hear me because I was so far into it at the time. Because cults, okay? And tell her like, hey, queen, you need to take a step back for a second and just consider that you are about to move in with somebody you've not had sex with yet. That's insane. Now, the other part of no sex before marriage is that every guy I grew up with had a porn addiction from the ripe age of 10. Okay? And also, all these elders and preachers, here's more tea, here's lore drop. All these elders and preachers that I grew up with in the church that I went to and also that I knew at the university. Oh, yeah. So some of them went to jail for being in a human trafficking ring. Another one cheated on his wife and continues to do so. And the other one had an OnlyFans account the entire time from the pulpit that he was talking about lasciviousness and avoiding the appearance of evil. And girls, you better make sure that you never wear spaghetti straps in here because your collarbones could be tempting to the people who are passing around plates full of Jesus's blood and skin. Okay, that makes sense. This is high control religious cults for you, baby. And I really do think out of all the tenets, the no sex before marriage is kind of crazy. Now, is that in the New Testament? Sure. Did Jesus talk about it? No. Paul did, the Apostle Paul, who in his letters to these early churches literally prefaced it with being like, low-key, some of these are my hot takes, okay? I just really don't think you should get married. That was one of the Apostle Paul's takes that we just sort of ignore it in the New Testament and then take everything else he says. He literally is like, you shouldn't do it because it's a weakness. You shouldn't get married. You should like deal with your horniness by yourself. Is what he said. That's what he said. And y'all not reading. You aren't reading the book that you're basing your life off of, that you're torturing people about their gayness, about their transness, about their race, about their different religious practices. Are you kidding me? And then you're out here saying, I'm pro-life. What about these tiny babies that haven't existed yet? Yes, we should fund a genocide in Palestine, actually. Okay, you say all is fair in love and war. So, but then when Jesus said you should probably turn the other cheek, okay? And I'm not saying religion should play a part. I think there should be a separation of church and state, but there's not right now. And it got to be in my bonnet. Now, how did I deconstruct? A lot of you want to know. I hesitate to say deconstruct because I mean, it is what it was, but because I grew up in a cult, it's so cult adjacent. It is a cult. That's what it is. That it was more not a very aware parsing out my faith and really considering as it was. I moved away from it. And as soon as I moved away from that community and that enmeshment, it was more the enmeshment falling away and me figuring out like, oh my God, I don't recognize myself in this is what prompted it, because I moved out of Tennessee into Virginia for my master's. And then I had my son. And I remember I was rocking him to sleep in the middle of the night. Also no help. Let me be clear. Zero help. I was a single mom with a Christian husband. Classic. And I thought to myself, there is no way that a God that says that he is all loving would ever be able to look upon the pain, the heartbreak, and the hatred that is expressed from people towards so many people since the beginning of the earth and say that he is all loving, because I am looking at my baby right now and thinking to myself, especially in the Church of Christ, right, where if you weren't Church of Christ, you were going to hell, and how many amazing people that I tortured myself over as a kid. I mean, I would get sick. I wouldn't be able to eat for days thinking my grandfather, who wasn't Church of Christ, was going to burn in hell, because he was my only relationship that kept me genuinely alive as growing up. And he was going to go to hell. And that haunted me. It destroyed me. I can't tell you how much that defined me growing up. Was we would have these moments and I would think to myself, because that's what I was being told. Like, hey, you're really close with your grandfather and we know that, and we know that's the most important relationship to you, and he's going to burn in hell. And I would think about his loneliness. I mean, it was just terrible to tell a 6-year-old, and that's what I grew up in. And then I looked at my son and I was like, dude, I'd fight God for this kid. Are you kidding me? If God came down right now and told me literally anything about my kid, I would be like, all right, let's duke it out. Let's duke it out, because obviously my love is stronger than yours. I don't fucking care right now. And if I sound sacrilegious, okay, well, this is the God that I grew up with. Your definition of God is going to be different. We will duke it out. So I guess really moving away and then having my son jump-started me being like, oh my God, the entire last, because I had my kid when I was, the summer I was 22. None of this is real. None of this is real. And then from there, it was a really hard, and still is in a lot of ways, because that religion, a high control religion, and coming up in a family that is all high control and has their own disorganized and chaotic and manipulative and emotionally and physically abusive forms of whatever, it's all so enmeshed. And so deconstructing from the religion was honestly easier than the familial fallout that happened and is still happening from it, because I have become the erring one. I made an even bigger splash because I was the golden child, because the university I went to and the church I grew up in, they were like, this is the epitome of femininity and pride and identity. And that's the other thing about these high control religions, is they pour so much of their identity into these young kids and into their children. And when their children make different choices than them, that is like a direct reflection on them in a way they can't get past. And I think that's one of the issues with Christianity and politics today, is people can't fucking let people be people. They are so bothered that somebody's making a different choice than them, because inherently they've instilled some of their identity into this other person, because that's how their religion is. It is, if that person errs, it is directly your fault, and the more people you bring with you to heaven, the better. And so half of this is guilt. It's not altruism, okay? It's not. It's because you don't want to go to hell, okay? And anyway, that, the deconstruction era of my life, it was, I would say the worst of it was really for 3 months, but the hardest part was like, okay, well, I also have these marital issues, so I'm going to get divorced. And not only am I getting divorced, which is a huge no-no, I am now being told I am a terrible mother. I'm not a Christian virgin. People don't recognize in me anymore any form of support that, my family was giving me emotionally, because I had been independent from them. It was all taken away. It was a lot of text message. It was genuinely the worst time of my life. It And the fallout from me leaving the religion was far worse than the moment I was holding my son in the middle of the night and thought to myself, oh, that version of God's not real. I don't necessarily tout myself as an atheist. I think that I'm arguably more spiritual now because I'm like, any way that you practice that makes your life better, as long as it's not directly harming another person, it's not sourced from hate, do it. Because I love having my own spiritual practice. I don't share it with anybody. And I don't necessarily know if there's a greater thing. But when I look at kids and when I look at nature and when I look at sunrises and sunsets, I can't help think, but this is a miracle. And this magic that happens between people where they're trying to get to know each other, I think that might be real magic. I think that's the magic that we have, is when I'm sitting next to someone and I start asking what their favorite colors are and I'm trying to understand them and we begin weaving a story together. That's magic. And I'm so much more open to that. And I see it so much more clearly now that it's not necessarily give glory to God, but I am so deeply grateful about life and living in a way that I wasn't before, but in a way that I think more closely adheres to what I want to believe Christianity seeks after, which is be grateful, be kind, and be good stewards to the earth around you, which I would argue a lot of peaceful religions do sort of stand on and practice. And then, humans go in and then they use it as a form of control. And that's just classic. They love to do that. But the fallout from family, from friends is still and was the most difficult part. And that's just part of high control religion. And all of this family, all of them are so warped politically. And it's sad because they're using the Bible to defend it. And I'm like, I know y'all didn't read it because I was there growing up with you. And I was the one who was like, guys, we need to go to church. I was the one waking up my parents so that we could go to church so that we wouldn't get in trouble. So all that to say, that's my lore drop. And whenever I'm participating in these religious and political conversations, I always get pissed at the cozy bookish people who are in their 30s who are like, this is just, I can't participate in these conversations. I need to, whatever. Okay, whatever, do that. But also you're an adult. You are straight up an adult. Then turn it off. Don't listen. But life is hard. And I think it is important to participate in these conversations because they are happening. And I think putting blinders on isn't necessarily helping anything. And anyhow, just read the book that you have based your life on. That's my big takeaway. Read the book, please. And I know and understand where these Make America Great Again people come from because I grew up with them, because I grew up with the most warped form of logic and people looking at this book and saying, this is how we live our lives, and not living a single ounce of it because it was the most unkind environment possible. Controlling, sexually abusive, I mean, the list goes on. So honestly, that's my lore drop. It's really light and cozy. But also here to remind you that coziness is a huge privilege. Coziness is a huge privilege, and I understand that. I'm not out here being like, oh, I feel so sad about it. It just is what it is. It is great to be able to incorporate that and build, and I do believe in it as a practice of trying to build a home and warmth into your life. And I am so privileged to be able to do that, to create whimsy, all that jazz. And then sometimes, tough conversations I think can be cozy just because it means that there's another side of it. And you can go somewhere and talk about things. And I don't want my life to be cozy because I avoid things. I want it to be cozy because my life has been constructed in a way that I always have a soft place to land after we take things head on. You know what I'm saying? Not that this is necessarily a difficult conversation, but anyhow, that's on that. That's on that. Okay. Let me know in the comments, I guess, if you have other questions about high control religions and cults and the details of that. So I will say the theater program at the university I went to changed my life. I love that theater program. I love the director. There are some people, I don't think all people who practice in the Church of Christ are horrible people. I think there are some people in there genuinely because it resonates with a part of them and they practice what they preach in that they are kind and they really have, structures and rules for their lives and they give glory to God, and that's fine. That's fine. I love some of them. And the theater program was great. Now, in the news that doesn't matter, what I'm reading and writing, I just finished Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark today, and it is a horror novella. Fantastic. I will do an in-depth review of this later on in the spooky season with Book Club Guy, because we're kind of going through a slew of spooky-ish, horror adjacent, some more horror than others books, and we'll do like a roundup of those sometime in like late October, November. But Ring Shout, I highly recommend it. It is on Kindle Unlimited, so I was able to read that through my my membership. Great. I devoured it. Absolutely devoured. Okay? I'm also reading a bunch of ARC copies of books right now, and I can't say what they are, but it's so fun that that's like part of my life, that I just get to read people's like first iteration of the work and then give them developmental notes. Okay, cool. What I'm writing, y'all know I'm still writing my romance novel. I'm in the editing stages. I want to get that nice and clean. I've been meaning to post the first few chapters and also kind of like the jacket copy blurb on my Substack forever, and I just have forgotten to do that, but that is coming up. And in other news, I have Cozy Adventures in Ireland in 2026, both August dates and October dates, and we have a slew of discounts available still for the October dates. So if you want to spend a cozy autumn in Ireland with me, Summer England, and talk about cozy fantasy and world building and ADHD and writing and autism and writing and how to build a cozy writing routine that's going to be suitable for your brain and your life and, you know, all of that jazz, while in Ireland, you should come with me. You should come with me. The links and such will be in the show notes as always. And oh my gosh, I'm going to be a good podcaster. Rate and review. It helps on Apple Podcasts and such. Let people know, guys, my big 2026 goal is to get this podcast sponsored. I want so bad to be like, and this podcast is brought to you by Mint Mobile. 15 gigabytes per month for only $15. And the best part is you can keep your current phone. See? I'm great at it. Also, not sponsored. Huge Mint Mobile fan. I've been on their shit for a year and I love it. All right, and it is a really good price and it's great. Anyhow, that's my big goal. That's our big manifestation is in 2026. I want to be saying this podcast is sponsored by and losing my mind over it. That's what I would like. That's what I need. That's what I want. And so if you rate and review, that's going to help. And we're going to be able to talk more about writing. And maybe we'll do live versions of this. I eventually want this to be in also like a video format. I just need to get a set ready and redo the room in my office to do that with and all that jazz. So I just need to do that. So anyhow, I hope you have enjoyed this chaotic lore drop of my religious experiences and all of that. I'm glad that it's behind me. I don't hold a bunch of like hate towards it. I just am aware of it. And so I engage in these conversations because I'm like, no, you can't come at me. You can't. Okay? Because we're about to get into a biblical debate and I famously have won all of those. So stay cozy, stay chaotic. Bye.